Hi, so it's April and it's C-section awareness month. I wanted to come on and share the birth of my second daughter, who was also a C-section delivery. So my first daughter was born by C-section, and it was for pretty much failure to progress. So I stopped dilating around 8.5 centimeters, and her position was a little off. She was posterior, and she was 8 pounds 15 ounces when she was born. So once I got pregnant with my second daughter, I was like, I want to have a vaginal delivery. So I did a little bit of research, and I saw that it was a good idea to go see a chiropractor that was certified in something called the Webster's technique. So I found a really great chiropractor, and I saw her towards the end of pregnancy every couple of weeks, and that was great. That helps so much with like that pain of like my stretching belly and my back and everything. My pregnancy with my second daughter was great. I had a little bit of morning sickness, but not too much. And that got better like around maybe like 11, 12 weeks of pregnancy. And then I carried my pregnancy totally different. We actually waited to find out what we were having with our second daughter as well until I delivered. And my pregnancy was so different that I was like, I think it's a boy this time. I'm not sure. So whenever I was pregnant, I saw the same midwife group that I did with my first daughter, and they were like, yeah, you can totally try for a VBAC. But I do remember like having VBAC counseling towards the end of pregnancy, and there was an OB who did the counseling, and she was like, you don't really have like a good chance of having a vaginal delivery ever because you're first, like you just stopped dilating, and so we don't think it's going to be successful, but like you can try, and here's their risks and everything. And so I was just like, okay, like I definitely still want to try. And so I remember like the group was like, we'll let you go to 41 weeks of pregnancy, but if you get to 41 weeks and you haven't went into labor, like we will not induce you because you've had a C-section in the past, and so it'll be like a repeat scheduled C-section. So I had a lot of pressure, like that I needed to go into labor before 41 weeks. So when I was getting close to my due date, I was just like praying, like, Lord, please help me to go into labor, like on my own. And so I worked, and my last day of work, I was so tired. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted. But that next day, I started to have some light contractions, and I lost my mucus plug. I actually had got a doula for that pregnancy, and she was amazing. She helped me like kind of talk about like, what I wanted, create kind of like a goal for like delivery and like what that would look like. And then like if I did end up having another C-section, like what I wanted as far as like in the C-section. So that was really cool because it helped me to kind of go through my options. So I started laboring, and the contractions were getting a little closer. So I called my doula. She came over. We labored at home for a while. And then I felt like they were getting like a little more intense. So I called my in-laws, and they picked up our oldest, Hannah Grace. And we went ahead and went into the hospital, and they were like, you're like 2 centimeters dilated. So we'd like to have you like walk the halls for an hour and then come back and see if you've made any progress. So my doula was like awesome, and she had me like lunging and squatting like in the like halls of the hospital, and this was like really early in the morning. And I went back, and they checked me, and they're like, you're like 2.5 centimeters, so like there's a little bit of change but not a lot. Like we recommend going home and resting. So we left, and my doula's like, a lot of mamas like to take a dose of Benadryl and sleep when they're in early labor to give their bodies rest for delivery. So I did that, and it was great. I did sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and I felt so refreshed. So that day, contractions kind of came and went, not super regular. So that night they started to pick up, and my doula came back over. We labored at home at our for a while. My mom came over, and it was so cool, like so peaceful. We had worship music playing. We were like talking together, just like enjoying time with each other. And then at one point, the contractions started to get pretty intense. And so I got really nauseous. I threw up, and my doula's like, Sarah, do you think your water's broke? And I was like, no, I don't think so. I don't feel anything. And she's like, why don't you go ahead and put a pad on and let's see if, there's anything leaking. So we did, and sure enough, she's like, yeah, your water's broken. It was like kind of a trickle. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like that didn't happen with my oldest. Like my water had to be broke, in labor. And so we just kept laboring at home. Like Brandon was like helping me through the contractions. She was helping me through the contractions. And this time around, I actually felt those contractions like in my belly versus in my back. So that was way more manageable pain-wise. But at one point, they were getting like a little bit more intense. And my doula was like, just let me know when you want to go into the hospital. And I'm like, okay, I think it's time. So we were like getting ready. We walked out the front door, and I was like, actually, I don't want to go yet. So we went back into our apartment and like labored for a little bit longer. And then I was like, okay, I think it's time. So we got into the car, drove to the hospital. Again, at this point, we lived like 5 minutes away as well. And so once we like got to the hospital, I felt my body really tense up, and I had a lot of fear. I delivered at the same hospital with my second daughter as with my first, and all of like the memories and the trauma came back from her delivery. And I was like, what if I, stall out in labor again? What if I have another C-section? Like, I'm so scared. But we kind of like talked about it. I prayed about it, and we went in. I got checked, and I was 6 centimeters dilated again. So that was actually really cool, because I was like, okay, like my body's been like working hard. Like I've made some changes. And so they, got me admitted. This time around, I couldn't do the birthing tub because I had had a C-section in the past, and they, their hospital policy was to have continuous monitoring because of the small risk of a uterine rupture. So I was able to labor for a little bit, like in the shower there, and then it kind of felt like my labor like really slowed down. Kind of started like my contractions started spacing out again. So we did ask for a breast pump again this time around, and I pumped and felt like it picked it up a little bit. There was one point where my midwife came in and was like, hey, you're actually 7 centimeters dilated, but it had already been a while that I was in the hospital. And she's like, I noticed that you have like some of your water that's not ruptured. So we had like a 4-bag and a hind bag. The 4-bag had like broke, but I still had that hind bag that was still intact. So she's like, I can break your water, and that will pick up contractions a lot. So I was like, okay, like let's do it. And it really did. Like my contractions started coming really hard, really fast, and I was not handling the pain well whatsoever. I was like in so much pain. I was so tired. I was falling asleep on the birthing ball, leaning over the bed between contractions. And I was getting like maybe like 30-second breaks in between those contractions. And so, I was with my husband and my mom and my doula, and I was like, guys, I really think I need to get an epidural. And they're like, Sarah, you can do it. Like, just keep going. And I'm like, no, I really need to get one. I think it will help me to rest. So I got an epidural, but it didn't really work fully. So it took the edge off a little bit, but then I was stuck in bed, and I could still feel the pain of the contractions, and it kind of made it worse because I couldn't like get up to move to cope with the contractions. So I let my nurse know, and she brought the anesthesiologist back in, and he was like, Sarah, I think you need to adjust your pain scale. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm totally still feeling pain. But I really didn't like speak up for myself. I felt really vulnerable. And so he left, And then I gave it some more time, and the contractions were getting really intense, but I was not coping with them. I was just really struggling. And so I called my nurse back and I was like, hey, there's something that's not right. I need the anesthesiologist to come back. So he came back and he was like, well, let's look at it. And he realized that the catheter for the epidural had slipped down to kind of like right where he put it in, and all that medication was just like pooling in my lower back. So that's why it wasn't actually working effectively. So he was like, I'm so sorry. Let me replace the epidural. So he replaced the epidural and it helped a little bit, but I was still feeling a lot of that pressure. My midwife came in and was like, hey, my shift is going to end soon. I'd like to check you. And so she checked my dilation and I was still 7 centimeters dilated. And she's like, we're doing change of shift. You're going to have a new midwife and a new OB over her. And so she's like, you can do this, keep going. So the new midwife came, the new OB came, and the nurse that was taking care of me from night shift was so great. She was like, you can do this, like, keep going. I'm rooting for you. And then I got a new nurse and she was nice, but just not as, I guess, supportive or encouraging as the previous nurse. And so my midwife came in and let me know, like, hey, the OB above me is not supportive of vaginal deliveries after a C-section. So I just want to let you know that. So they were really pressing for a repeat C-section at that point. And so I was having so much pain, and I was also so tired this time around too, that I was like, you know what, like, if this is what we're going to need to do, like, we'll just do it. And her heart rate also was getting elevated, and I got a fever again, like my first delivery. And so I really felt like, because I had so much anxiety and I think I didn't process through the trauma from my first birth, that my body just couldn't relax and continue dilating. And so they took me back for the C-section. And on the way back to the OR, I was having so much pain and feeling so much pressure, like vaginal pressure. And so I got into the OR and I let the doctor know, like, I can still feel everything. Like, I'm not going to have a C-section and be cut and feel it. Like, we need to get this figured out. So he's like, okay, well, I'll give you a spinal, but if it doesn't work, then I'm going to have to put you under general anesthesia. And my husband wasn't with me at this time. And I was like, no, like, please, I really want to be awake for my baby's delivery. We don't even know what we're having. This is really important to me. And so he's like, okay, well, let's try and see. And I was like, Jesus, please, please, Lord, like, let this spinal work. So they gave me the spinal, and thank God it did work. And I immediately felt from my neck down, just kind of go numb and feel pretty tingly. And so then they brought my husband in, and they did the C-section, and they did the incision, and they pulled her out. And this time around it was cool because they did, like, honor, our request. Like, they did clear drapes for us, and they pulled her out and they're like, it's a girl. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, what? Because I was like thinking it was a boy. But I was so happy because I have 3 brothers and I'm the only girl. And so I was like, thank you, Lord. Like, I'm so excited. I really wanted our daughter to have a sister. I was like, that's so cool. And so my husband was like, Sarah wants skin to skin as soon as possible. So they cut her cord and then put her skin to skin with me in the OR, which was incredible. So amazing. I was really tired though from the anesthesia. I was getting like kind of drowsy and stuff, but I was like having to stay awake for my baby. And she was like queuing, like looking for the breast, and I'm like, she wants to breastfeed, but my arms were so numb that I couldn't like pick them up to latch her on. So I was just like talking to her, and then they moved us over to recovery. And actually before that, I remember the OB that was there looked at me and was like, okay, so you cannot ever have a vaginal delivery again. Don't even try for one. Like, you're done. You just have to have C-sections from this point on. And I was just like not really processing at that point. So anyways, we got into the recovery room and got her latched on, and she did so amazing. And we were like, her name's gonna be Bethany Joy. And we were just like, she's so gorgeous. Like, we love her so much. And then, I got moved over to postpartum and everything. And my recovery was actually really good with her as well. So I was super thankful for that. And she did so great with breastfeeding. So, again, I did feel really discouraged because I was like, I failed. Like, I didn't have the vaginal delivery that I wanted. And like, maybe I just can't have vaginal deliveries after this. So I was really disappointed in that part of it, but like, it was totally worth it. And overall, like, I loved my labor experience. Like, like, it was so much more peaceful this time